friends. Thanks for coming back. I wanted to do another one of these why buy videos where I just discuss a car that's hopefully remotely interesting and discuss why on earth somebody would want to buy such a thing. If you've seen some of the other ones I've done, this is the second Honda product that I've done one of these videos on. This one specifically, this car that I just picked up for myself as a little commuter. It is a 2004 Honda Civic Hybrid with a 5-speed manual transmission. It's kind of cool. It's, you know, when I tell people I've got a hybrid with a manual, it catches most people by surprise. It's actually not the only one that is out there that you can get with a manual. The first-gen Honda Insight was available with a manual transmission and a CVT. This car was available with a manual transmission as well as a CVT. And this Honda CRZ was also available for a bit with a manual transmission as well as the CVT. I'm sure you can imagine most of these out there are automatics. They are the CVT car. Although they did make, for the 3-year span of 03, 04, and 05, they did make a fair number of these in a manual transmission. So while they're uncommon, I wouldn't call them particularly rare. What is rare is finding one with like no miles on it. This one just driving it today turned 100,000 miles on it. So this one is a pretty low mileage example. Yeah, I'm actually, unlike most of the other cars that you've seen me do videos on, this one's not for sale, not just yet anyways. I plan on putting some miles on this thing. Gas is $5+ a gallon, and that's where this car excels. And honestly, to not bury the lead here, that is why you would buy one of these cars. You buy one of these for economy. Now, there's lots of cars that you can purchase for good fuel economy. You can buy, a second-gen Prius, which was this car's contemporary. Anything hybrid. There's lots of options that you have. But what makes this car unique and why I wanted to do an actual video on it is, again, it does have that 5-speed manual transmission, which is very much interesting. I'm not going to come out and say that it makes this car super fun or exciting to drive. It certainly does make it more interesting to drive than its CVT counterparts. And if you want something that has a back seat, is a hybrid, and has a manual, this is literally your only game in town. Anything else is the first-gen Insight and the CRZ. Those are 2-seaters. So I personally did need something with 4 doors, or at least a decent back seat for my son, who's 5. And this fits that bill. To talk about that 5-speed transmission, yes, it does make it more interesting to drive. This car's 93 horsepower, so it doesn't exactly make it into this, sports car or anything like that just because it has a manual transmission. The gears are tall. It doesn't have a ton of torque, even with the small AMA electric motor assist that this car has. It is very much a momentum car, but purely for economy. It's not a momentum car like you would think a Miata is, where you take it out and you have to pay attention to how fast you're going and you try and maintain speeds through corners. For sporting and for fun, for this car, that's not why you're doing that. You're doing that purely for economy. It does not handle particularly well. I do think there are enough Honda Civic aftermarket parts out there. You probably could find a way to make this handle reasonably well. But out of the box, with the 185/70 series 14-inch tires, of which nobody makes a decent performance tire in, it's not going to be a handler. It very much through and through is an economy car, and that is why you purchase this. Now, the interesting thing with that 5-speed transmission, yes, it doesn't make it particularly sporting, and it doesn't really make it a super fun car. It makes it fun from the aspect of you have a lot more control of the fuel economy and how you approach it, because it doesn't have regenerative braking like you would say on the CVT variants or on a Prius, which was, again, of the second-gen Prius at the time that this car was made. You only regen in gear, so you get to pick. Are you going to leave it in neutral and coast to have better economy that way? Are you going to leave it in gear and decelerate with engine braking, which is how it does regen in this particular vehicle? So there is a little bit of gamesmanship in deciding what is going to get you the best fuel economy, and you have much greater control of that and how you approach it with the manual transmission. So I think if you are seriously looking to get into the world of hypermiling, the malleability and the manual transmission, along with how that controls the hybrid system, it really does make it a better platform, in my opinion, than either this same car with a CVT or maybe even some of the second-gen Priuses. With that said, this car is very different than its contemporary at the time, the second-gen Toyota Prius. The Prius has a much more upmarket feel than this car does, both from a tech standpoint, from an interior materials standpoint. This car inside very much looks and feels like a Honda Civic. There's almost nothing in here other than a couple of indicators in the instrument cluster that's going to let you know it's anything other than a standard Honda Civic. The Prius at the time had that nice big touch screen that would give you all kinds of feedback on what the hybrid system is doing. This car has none of that. It has a basic single DIN standard Honda Civic CD player. It doesn't have any kind of special logos or anything. There's no leaves hidden anywhere. It doesn't have that sort of, attempted futuristic feeling that a Prius, when it was new at the time, in 04, 05, had. This very much took the approach of, this is a Honda Civic that you know and that you love and that you want to purchase simply with an electrified component to it, and that's going to get you another 25-ish% better fuel economy. That's it. Prius at the time took the exact opposite of that, where they gave you a more futuristic shape. They gave it a little bit of a more upscale feeling interior, especially in the higher trim levels. They gave you a better feel of technology with a unique shifter that was different and more futuristic, and with the big touch screen and the way the stereo is, and that you can hide the stereo away behind the little door, and the whole fastback with the dual back window situation and the teardrop shape. Side by side, I think the Prius is the better car than just purely a Civic Hybrid. But I understand why at the time, if you didn't want to be a quote-unquote Prius driver, that this was a much more just regular, standard, contemporarily styled vehicle in 2004. Also, side by side, I do think the Prius is the nicer car, the more usable car, with the hatchback type setup as compared to this just being a standard 3-box sedan. However, if you can get one of these with a manual, the added control that gives you, if you really want to have control over what your fuel economy numbers are. So if you just want to have more control over the hybrid system and how that affects your fuel economy, and it is still a little bit more exciting to drive than anything with an automatic, be that a Prius or any other hybrid. It makes it kind of compelling from that standpoint. And so if you want a car that's built for fuel economy, it's going to get good fuel economy, and you want it to have a little bit more of an interesting time driving it, whether that's from just a general sense of control or actually wanting to get more into the world of hypermiling to any extent, then I think this is a very good buy, especially since most people that are looking for a used economy car are going to look more towards a Prius than something like this. And I think the market reflects that, being that a Prius of this era will generally still command a premium over a Honda Civic Hybrid, automatic or manual. But if you can find a decent manual that's been reasonably well maintained, go for it. I think it's a really good buy. I got this one for not a lot of money, especially when considering the mileage. And they do tend to be reasonably reliable. There are some quirks to this one. It does have the early EPS, that's the electronic power steering system in it, and it's maybe the worst feeling steering of any vehicle I've ever driven. It's completely numb. It's completely vague. It doesn't want to self-center to the point where there might be something wrong with it. I don't know, but on my research, there's so many people complaining about it online that it might just be how this thing works, which would easily be the worst steering I've ever felt in a car. And yeah, it is early electronic power steering, so maybe that's just kind of how it works, but it's not great. It's an economy car through and through as far as suspension goes, but it's comfortable, it's quiet. A lot of the parts are just shared with the standard Honda Civic, which means that they're plentiful and they're cheap, and they're built well, and the car's bolted together well. So those are all things you generally want in a commuter and an economy car, which is why you see them with 200-something thousand miles on it. It looks fine. It's got this kind of cool, I don't know what we're calling this, paint job. I don't know. It's a cool mint evergreen. I don't know. It's a bluish silver. So it looks good. I like these 14-inch wheels. I don't like that I can't get tires for them that are just not some off-brand tire. But I think they look good, and I think they fit this car well. And apparently the design is built for economy, so they cut through the air really well. I like the little spoiler on the back. It's just a very usable car. And with the manual, it does add a little wrinkle of interestingness to driving it and to using it, and to having greater control over your economy. And it kind of, again, adds a little gamesmanship to what it's like to drive, and to try and do whatever you can to really eke out those miles if you want. Or if you don't, you just drive it normally and don't pay attention to regen and things like that, and you're still going to get rewarded with over 40 miles a gallon. And it's still going to be comfortable, and the air conditioning's cold, and all the things that you would get out of a mid-2000s Honda Civic. So that's kind of it. I just wanted to go, take a second and review the car, quote-unquote review it. It's not a thorough review, but simply just, why would somebody want to buy one of these? And that's why I think anyone would want to buy one of these. So if you've thought about it, looked at one of these in the past for any reason, or you're just looking to buy an economy car, and this is one of the ones that was on the list. You're not looking to spend a ton of money because, well, economy car. Yeah, I think it's a compelling buy, especially if you can find one with a manual. You'll kind of turn a lot of heads with your amongst car people, anyways, with having a hybrid with a manual. And that's pretty much it. So thanks for watching. Thanks for hanging out. Thanks for tagging along. Thanks for listening to my rambling. And do all the YouTube things, subscribe, notification, and I'm going to be doing a few more of these. In fact, I've got a diesel Benz lined up that I'm going to be doing soon. That should be fun. So check that out. Check out everything else. And thanks, homies.